Good afternoon and welcome to the session on e-construction. The only session today that we're going to encourage you to use your handheld devices. Or just think about what those handheld devices can do for you in increasing your productivity and delivering your construction program. I'm Tom Zagorski and I'll be facilitating this session today. I hope you enjoyed the videos as you walked into the room. Those are courtesy of Michigan DOT. We have a couple other videos to show you at the end of the session if you care to stick around. But let's start out saying that FHWA is tasked with developing a e-construction implementation plan. We have assembled a group of subject matter experts. A few of them are here today that you'll hear from shortly. And most importantly, you in the audience. We want to hear your thoughts and ideas of what goes into a good implementation plan for e-construction. It's the objective of the plan to deliver strategies for presenting concepts, capabilities, and the application of electronic project management systems to state highway authorities, local authorities, contractors, consultants, and FHWA personnel. Today's session consists of presentations of subject matter experts from FHWA, from Michigan DOT, and Florida DOT. After the Florida DOT concludes, we'll entertain questions. And also, this session is being broadcast by webcast out there into the e-world. So anybody who has a question on the webcast, please feel free to use the chat room, and we'll entertain your questions after Florida concludes. Subsequently, and most important, we're going to have a roundtable discussion about what it is you would like to see in a e-construction implementation plan. Now, this is a chance for you to tell us your thoughts, what ideas, what strategies we should be putting in this plan that'll help you move forward with this deployment of this technology. You should have all received an e-construction workbook. If you haven't, please raise your hand and we'll get it over to you. This workbook has a session overview, it has a glossary of terms, it has the presentations from FHWA, Michigan, and Florida, as well as a fact sheet on what e-construction is. At the end of the year, we will have the workbook ready to be downloaded from the Everyday Counts website that will have all the previous sessions. We're doing 7 of these regional summits, the previous sessions, presentations, as well as the subsequent. Now, on to the presenters. From FHWA, I'd like to introduce Brian Cawley. He currently serves as the Construction Management Team Leader for the Office of Infrastructure for FHWA. Since joining FHWA in 1997, Brian has held a variety of positions in Utah, Nebraska, Chicago, North Dakota, Florida, Washington, and Colorado. Prior to working with FHWA, Brian worked for a contractor, Staker Paving and Construction, and the Utah Department of Transportation. Brian holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of Nebraska, a master's degree in construction engineering from Iowa State University, and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Utah. Brian is also a licensed professional engineer in the state of North Dakota. Brian?
Thank you. Is this mic on yet? No? Hey, thumbs up, great. Thank you very much. First off, I want to start out with a little bit of story here. How do you serve legal papers to someone? How do you serve them? Sorry, what? A constable? Sorry, how do you serve legal papers? Do you have to physically hand them something? No? Who said no? Do you have to post something on their door when you get legal notice to someone? Traditionally, you had to give them to them in person. They had to receive the paper to be considered served. Didn't mean they had to grab it, but it had to be given to them. But what we have is a story. Read an article in September in the New York Post of an individual. It demonstrates the changing world we're in right now. This was a divorced man who was trying to serve his ex-wife. The youngest son had just turned 21. He wanted to stop paying child support. And his attorney told him, well, you have to serve your ex-wife that you're going to stop. She has to receive notice first before you stop paying. So he tried to find her, went to her sister's house, because that's supposedly where she was living. Sister said, nah, she's moved, she's gone. He tried calling the kids. They were all over 21. They wouldn't return his call. But she had a Facebook page. And she was very active on that social network, would post pictures where she had been. So he tried chasing her off her Facebook page. And he couldn't catch her. So he went back to his attorney and said, what do I do? I can't catch her. I don't know where she's living, and I can't find her. Not returning calls or anything. The attorney said, well, post it on her Facebook page. You know she's there. The advice was to go out and take a snapshot of the Facebook page when she was last in there, post it, take a snapshot, you posted it, and a day or two later when you go in there and see that she's posted new pictures after you posted the serving, record that too and consider her served. And then let's take it to the judge. The judge accepted that. She was served using Facebook. I don't remember the attorney's name that the New York Post said in there, but there was an attorney that reviewed this case and said this is a landmark decision to say that the archaic means of having to hand a person a piece of paper is no longer necessary. We're communicating in new means today with electronic means of Facebook, cell phones. We're interacting in new communication modes. And you can hear a lot of that here, and part of our discussion, I suspect will come up, is you're telling me I don't have to go in my back room and pull out my blue pen to sign it because that makes me feel like no one can copy it? You can have some of that discussion. But that's what e-construction is when we start looking at it, is what is the definition of it? It's using that paperless environment. Some of the objectives you're going to get out of my introduction with you is what is it? What is e-construction? Where did e-construction come from? What can we expect to accelerate the deployment of e-construction? Because it's both an Everyday Counts initiative as well as an AASHTO AII initiative. So you got two organizations out there saying this is a great technology and we need to see it deployed nationally. And finally, some tools that we've started development in preparation for this event. So what is e-construction? Basic definition. E-construction is the collection, review, approval, and distribution of highway construction contract documents in a paperless environment. Is it just storing our PDF documents? No, it's more. It's electronically capturing construction data as it's occurring out there in the field. It's using that data, submitting it for all construction documents associated out there. And it's in a paperless environment. That doesn't mean you email it to someone, they print it out, then they sign it, and then they fax back, and you get another piece of paper and you sign it. It's in a complete paperless environment. I loved that when I was buying my house, how many times I had to sign something and fax it back and forth. I was like, wow. Increased use of mobile devices. Increased automation of document reviews and approvals. Essential use of electronic signatures by all parties. Your consultants, your contractors, and your state DOTs. And using a secure document and workflow management system accessible to all stakeholders on any device. Building that platform out there where you can interact with all your partners regardless of their device and share that information. Now let's talk a little bit about where did e-construction come from? Did it come from the federal government? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about Map 21. How many times within Map 21 do you see a reference to a paper document? You must fill out a piece of paper and sign it and submit it. The data has to be printed out and given to someone. There's only 2 times. And take a guess where they are. They're in trucker logbooks. Your daily logs on your trucker's hours, those have to be in paper form. But there's 81 occurrences of electronic documents being used in MAP 21. Either transferring data, transferring money, assuring that processes are occurring. 81 times it talks about using electronic means. You have also back in 2011 presidential memorandum to all the federal agency executives telling them to the fullest extent possible agencies should eliminate the use of paper and use electronic record keeping. You have the Government Paperwork Elimination Act back in 1998 that supported this. Federal Highway, actually back in 1989, we issued a policy memo related to this, saying that electronic documents were just as good. But you need to establish a secure, reliable record system and a method of storing those records in that electronic form. So 25 years ago, Federal Highway was issuing guidance on this. It's still applicable today. So everything's in place. Let's look at state governments. It's just not the federal government who's been advancing these systems. Utah DOT has been using e-signatures and electronic payroll verification for well over a decade. They've been using pieces. You got Texas DOT that started doing some experimental projects with the Dallas-Fort Worth Connector project 3-4 years ago, and now they're moving far ahead in complete program implementation. You have the Florida DOT administering a large e-construction pilot project at this time and looking at full program implementation. You have Michigan DOT that started pilot projects about 2 years ago. They've completed their pilot projects and they're fully implemented now within their program. E-construction has been maturing over the past couple decades. We've been developing the tools, the technologies have came along, we've proven them on pilot projects and in programs, and it's here today. It's out there. I will give credit to Michigan DOT. They termed the phrase e-construction. But from a technology perspective, all of you have been involved in maturing this technology and developing it and applying its usage. What can we expect here from Federal Highway and AASHTO over the next little while to assist in the accelerated national deployment of e-construction? Well, what you can expect, as you've heard all throughout today, 7 regional summits explaining the technology, 2 subject matter experts are attending each of one of the summits to present how their respective state has adopted e-construction. We're also collecting from you at the end here. We'll answer questions, but we also want from you, what are some implementation strategies to help deploy this nationally? So bringing all that together over the next 2 months, about January timeframe, we should have a complete implementation plan for e-construction. We'll be meeting with AASHTO and kind of working together to figure out what's the best way to advance these implementation strategies. And then during 2015 and 2016, you'll see us enacting those implementation strategies. Finally, couple tools that we've started developing. Based upon our experience with Everyday Counts 1 and 2, we know you always ask for, do you have an implementation guide? How do I do this? Well, Florida DOT is kind of right in the middle of adopting it, doing a pilot project and looking at a complete program. So we've asked them if they'd step up and help produce the how-to guide. From their perspective, how did Florida DOT adopt e-construction within their program? In addition, we always get the question, well, how much does it cost? What's the cost benefit? We've started a research project with Turner Fairbanks that's documenting that nationally for us. You're going to hear some dollar figures from Cliff here from Michigan DOT, from their cost savings and why they're advancing it in Michigan, and probably some from Amy also, why are they doing it? But from a national perspective, we kicked off a research project that's going to document that and tell us nationally what's it going to do for us. In summary, who's all guiding this? Well, we formed a team here. We got 12 different people. You can see there's several leads with e-construction nationally, whether it be from Minnesota DOT, Florida DOT, Michigan, Iowa, Texas, Utah, and some federal highway people sprinkled in there too. All of us are working together to help collect the information and help this technology be deployed nationally in an accelerated manner. For additional information, we had some webinars with our federal highway folks about a month ago. We posted that material on our website. In addition, we have some different movies that have been produced by Texas DOT and Michigan DOT that describes why they're doing it and how they're applying it to their field. Some very good training sessions about different softwares. We've posted the links from that site to the respective YouTube movies that Michigan DOT and Texas DOT has advanced. We plan on continuing to post materials at these different websites, whether it be Federal Highways Construction website, our Everyday Counts website, or back over to AASHTO's AII Initiative website. With that said, I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Brian. I guess I better go check my Facebook page. Next up from Michigan DOT is Cliff Farr. Cliff holds 3 degrees, an associate degree in science in construction technology from Lansing Community College, a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology from Detroit Institute of Technology, and a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Michigan State University. Cliff has been responsible for construction-related business process improvements, construction data management, and construction field automation at Michigan DOT since 1985. He's currently MDOT's construction business owner of AASHTO's Project Construction Materials web application and is heading up MDOT's paperless construction initiative. Cliff is one of 3 MDOT employees charged with establishing a strategic plan for modernization of MDOT's legacy computer system. Cliff?
Thank you, Tom. Greetings, everyone. It's truly exciting for me to be here. The people in this room are the ones that are going to make these things happen for the future. Everybody knows about state employee. You get this connotation about state employee. And typically I think that comes from they have a job. And so they show up at work every day and they kind of got their blinders on. They get their job done and go about their business. That's not who we are. We are people we work for the state, but we're entrepreneurs that have passion, and actually we have a vocation because we know these people, we want to make it better, and so it's not just that we're taxpayers and it's the right thing to do and there's all kinds of efficiencies, but we're actually making people's lives better. Facts versus fun. Our inspectors are faxing things all over the place, no, they're not. They have much more ownership in our processes, and I'm going to get into that right now. These are the folks that are going around. Rob from FHWA wasn't able to be here, so I got some, we're not supposed to read my slides, so I'll read this because Rob's got some very good statements from an FHWA perspective on what to expect once you get into these things. We already had certain components in place. We were electronic in a lot of ways. We are a field manager state. There are several of you that are site manager states, but we had electronic data gathering processes already in place, which is pretty important if you're going to gather this information for like change orders, estimates, daily work reports. You have to have that electronic in order to have that basis. Those are essential things that you have to have in place, and we had those in place, so we were good to go to get started. But We got mountains and mountains of paperwork. We got some great slides. I didn't bring them all, but we've got some great slides of plan rooms, contractor filing rooms, our filing rooms. And the reason for that is we've got so many people that are involved in these things. They're just on an average contract that's participating, FHWA participant, we got the FHWA, we got the prime, we got the subs, we got multiple offices within the DOT, whether it's materials stuff, whether it's a region office, whether it's the inspector's folders. We could have a piece of paper that appears 14 different times with 14 different manila folders. Doesn't happen anymore. So these are all the people that we got on board to make this thing happen. Okay, so the final steps to reach the paperless goal. These are the things that I mentioned earlier on that we had already in place, but then we had the electronic plans proposals, electronic bidding, digitally encrypted electronic signatures. That was a foundation that allowed us to do what we do. It's not a fax signature, it's not a wet signature, it's not a copied signature. It's a digitally encrypted electronic signature which carries information in the background to ensure that that is a valid signature. And once we get those in, if it's not a valid signature, we get a red question mark across it that we call and we validate. Once we validate, we put them in our trusted users, and then every time they come in after that, it's a green check mark, so we're good to go. But some of the other things that are involved is, the workflows, because once you go from a manual process to electronic process, you got the workflows. That document has to travel to certain places, and if there's thresholds, like on change orders for additional signatures, those things all are part of it. Mobile devices, online books, and online manuals was just really cool. Really cool. Our last construction manual we published was in 2003. And just like spec books, you publish them every so often. It's a very difficult process. You get all your addendas and everything, build in the addendas that you want. Now, and we learned the spec book one from Missouri DOT, they're publishing 2 spec books a year. They'll let contracts under this spec, then they'll let contracts under the later spec. It's always up to date. Our construction manual is up to date overnight now. And we got videos in it to show them how to edge bituminous pavement and all these kind of things. That part of it was so fun for me. It was really, really good stuff. And fillable forms, and they can use voice. I'll talk about that in a second. Use PDF forms where we're using the fillable forms. And so therefore we can print them as a PDF. We can put them in our electronic document management system. Pretty complete package. What does e-construction look like? The contracting community in Michigan loves it. We just, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll talk about this a little bit more about the contractors, but the document's there. The way this whole thing got started in Michigan is our deputy director, Greg Johnson, took myself and a couple other guys to meet with our contracting association, because forever in Michigan, we're not going to pay them for that curb and gutter unless we know that they have got quality, Corsag, Fine Ag, the sand, re-steel, cement. We got to know that that's quality product, or we're not going to even pay them for the work item. And so he would get phone calls saying, how much are they paying me? And so he'd call our managing office, why are you paying? Well, we don't have the documentation. I sent it. No, I didn't. I sent it. No, I didn't. This has been going on forever. So he comes over and he says, I don't want any more phone calls about missing documentation on materials. Fix it. And I'd say, okay. I'm going, oh, how in the heck do you do that? And so we got back and started looking at the materials saying, hey, if we can go paperless on the material stuff, what about all the other documentation and getting rid of all these files? What about that? And that's where it went. So for the contractor, everything's transparent now. If MDOT said we didn't get it, the contractor can go out there in a document processing, electronic processing software and say, it's right there, and I turned it in 4 days ago. What's going on? And the reverse is true too. I turned in my materials documentation 2 weeks ago. Why didn't I get paid for it? You turned it in 30 minutes ago. What are you telling me? So it's really transparent, and everybody's on board, and it's pretty cool. So everything's transparent, and they got the flexibility of using it out on the grade. They can do their work out on the grade. They can do their work on vacation in Hawaii. It's there, it's accessible, and we can really move the documentation along and avoid those 2-day mailings and all that kind of thing. For the inspectors, it's a big, big deal for our inspectors. Our inspector's job is not to sit in the truck for 2 hours a day filling out paperwork. Our inspector's job is to be out on the grade inspecting. That's what they're supposed to be doing. So they've got access to all this stuff that they never had access to before. They got access to the fillable forms and all the manuals, all our manuals, density manuals, welding manuals, everything is out there for them. And it's all right here. And they just got so excited. And even today, you know, automation's always interim. We get so far and it's really good, but there's more things you want to do. Our inspectors today are so excited about not having to print out all those plans, especially our local government guys. Our local government guys, in Grand Rapids, our local government guy had to print out 60 sets of plans to review with all his locals to go over. And he says, Cliff, I got them right here now. This is just outstanding. But they're PDF, okay? And that's a great interim solution. They like it. They can expand it, take a look at things. But what about the future? There's some cool things we can do in the future, like turning on and turning off layers. I just want to see my removal items. I just want to see my utilities. I want to see my drainage. You know, when you got a big plan set, that's pretty powerful stuff. And so we got some ideas for the future as well. I guess where I'm going. But easier access and translates to more time out on the job site. One of the inspectors, I was at their office and he got there and he says, Cliff, he says, this is so cool. I used to come back, park my state truck, go in the office, make out copies for myself, for the contractor, for the office file, and I would go home, take me an hour and a half, and then I'd go home. Now, I go back to the office, park my state truck, get in my truck, and go home. They're just being able to spend more time on the grade and operate much more efficiently than they were able to do before. So it's really fun. The engineers, more timely oversight. They've always got their files at their fingertips, no matter where they're at. It's just phenomenal. We had, in Michigan, we can go to a Tier 4 change order, which means that there's certain thresholds that get so big, and then other people have to sign it at a different level. Those things used to take an average, I think, of 30 days to turn those around. Now they're getting done in 3 days. We've got some that are getting done within 8 minutes, not the Tier 3s, but the other change orders at lower level within 8 minutes. It's so fun on so many levels. So they can electronically sign them and make decisions way quicker than they could before. Management and FHWA implementation. Okay, so the transparency is obvious. I've mentioned that. That's the same for everybody. All the access for the Freedom of Information Act in Michigan, where somebody's requesting information, you can give them read-only to certain access and just say, hey, go get it yourself. Our auditors, everybody else, it's just right there. They don't have to travel anymore. How did we get started? Well, first of all, we had to learn how to do this, because there's some certain steps that you have to take in order to make this happen up front. And then you start some pilots and say, did we do it right or didn't we? I told the team, we're going to get blindsided. We're going to get blindsided, but we have to be nimble. We have to fix it right away, because we can't have people talking about this new e-construction initiative and bad-mouthing it, and justifiably so. We can't do that. We have to be all over it. It's worked out so well. But so these are the contracts, about $140 million worth of work that we got it out in the field, worked with the technicians, worked with the engineers, got our process workflows done, how to standard name documents so you can find them in the folders, and then how to name the folders, got all that set up. And so those are the pilot contracts that we used. And 2013 was our learning curve. In 2014, everybody's got at least one now. Our very first production contract was one that you typically probably won't pick for production. It was a $160 million rehab in Detroit, 5 lanes eastbound, westbound for I think 7 miles, $180 million worth of total reconstruction that they had an incentive to get done early, get the traffic open. The contractor told me, the prime contractor told me, Cliff, if we hadn't had E-construction on this, there's no way we could have slung that much paper. So that's how quick we were operating that. So that's just so much fun to hear. So each office this year's got one, and our implementation challenges, I was going to mention, there's another slide I'll talk about what I was just going to talk about in a second, but implementation challenges, not everybody is totally convinced that this digitally encrypted electronic signature stuff was the answer. We got over that. And they are complying with it. The contractors, everybody's on board. Aligning DOT and IT goals, IT security. It took us a little bit because our document management software is inside our firewall. And so there's security issues that we had to work through in order to allow the contractors and subcontractors, even FHWA couldn't get in. So we had some security things that we had to fix. IT infrastructure. We saw this one coming. And what that means is once we have this out in the construction office, this construction offices in some places had a little bit of trouble with response times, with network speeds. And so we got with our IT department and said, we know they've got problems right now. We're going to load her up some. Maybe we ought to fix this before we roll out this program. Didn't happen. I'm going to cut this conversation short. They're doing it right now. But in a lot of cases, they're falling in behind, but it is working. But you got to make sure that they're not sitting there for 15 seconds to get screens up. That doesn't work well. And the cost thing. Management has been 100% behind us on the cost. So the iPad, we're using iPads, and the reason we're using iPads is because iPads were the only device at the time that had internal 4G and could use the what am I looking for? Being able to locate yourself geographically. And so, yeah. So that's why we went to those. And we're starting to look at tablets right now, but the tablets, I'd heard that they were supposed to be out last year in October with the functionality in them. Didn't happen. I heard they had battery problems. But we're gonna try some out right now, and they're still not quite there, but everybody's got an iPhone, so they can use that for personal hotspot with those devices. Implementation challenges. Okay, and I've talked about some of this already. You know, we had to get those workflows, how that document got passed along at the different levels. We had to get that all straightened out electronically. And converting paper process and naming conventions I mentioned. Increased use of mobile devices. A lot of the guys had their children show them how to use the iPads. When we went out with our training, we actually trained them, had an iPad training as well, and then gave them a bunch of links on the internet. The one nice thing about having an iPad, nobody using it, is the training on the internet. It's so cool. You can go out there and you can find some. The downside is there's like 432 million of them, and only 50 of them are good. And so it takes a little while to get the right training video that you want them to look at. So, okay. Other contract administration. Okay, we had to develop a special provision in the pilots. We had a special provision. We went out and we met with the contractors, a mandatory pre-bid. If they weren't at that meeting, they weren't allowed to bid the contract. And so we explained to them that we're jumping into a different era now, and this is what's going to be expected of you. And we went right down through it with them. FHWA, obviously we had to adhere to all the regulations that we had in place and make sure that we weren't a bottleneck for anybody, ensuring the process was accessible for all parties without creating bottlenecks. We want this thing to run smoothly. So there are some challenges that you have to address up front. As far as our staff is concerned, we had we went into our document management software because MDOT already had a license for it, and Design had been using it for 10 years, something like that. And so we already had a document management tool in place, and we already had some administrators that knew how to write APIs and that kind of thing for that software. And so that was really easy for us to jump in and go. Jump in and go. That may not be the same for everybody. There might be some homework that you need to do to decide what package, what tool would work best for your state. So we had a lot of people that got on board. And we had the pilot included technicians and engineers from various offices to tell us, hey, this is what we need to get those people on board. FHWA tells us what we need to get everybody on board. All our materials labs, get with them, say, okay, we're going to make your documentation fillable PDFs now. What do we need to do? And so it was a good process. One time I remember when we were meeting with our test lab, a young lady that works in structures brought in a stack of paper about like that and just kind of set it on the table. And I'm thinking, she's saying, what is it you guys are doing, really? And by the time we got done with that, she was coming up with some suggestions and was really excited about it. And coming in, she didn't really know what it was. But going out, she says, let's give this a try. This sounds like it's got some real potential. And then we got a core team that was processed. It was myself and some other folks, design folks and construction folks that rode the storm out all the way through, that learned everything that we need to learn, make the decisions we need to make. And I was a project manager. We had seven subject matter experts from design and construction to make this happen. Additional positions required. I just got 2 new positions because we, like this group, want to launch our agencies nationally into the digital age. And that's what we're charged with, and that's what we're charged with here as well. It's really good. And so we had to do a little reorganization as well. And by the way, design, John Lobestall, some of you know John Lobestall from Michigan. John and I had a presentation early on. John was on the team. Had a presentation early on at our aeronautics bureau. We came out and I said, John, we got a collision between design and construction. What's that going to look like in the future? We got this collision. He says, yeah, necessary collision. I've used it ever since. John, you're right on the money, buddy. It is a necessary collision. It's not this handoff anymore where design gets done with the contract and just sends out the plans and washes their hands of it. There's this collaboration that's very, very healthy. And so these are the numbers that Brian was talking about earlier, and we base those estimates on a $25 million interchange just northwest of Detroit that was built. We had a big spreadsheet, estimated what the costs were. Every time we found out how many documents they actually used, we'd update the spreadsheet, or update the MDOT costs, the MDOT savings, contractor savings, and total savings. And that was our best guess, $12 million. But I'm going to tell you right now, somebody has got to be out there that knows about ROI. Somebody has got to have a scientific method to give us integrity in our numbers. Okay, it takes 2 days to mail a document. You got an average contract. Let's just say you had 300 documents. That's 600 mail days. That's 2 years on one little contract. Who knows how to put a benefit on that? You know, I don't know. How do you put a benefit on everybody's watching you now? The integrity that the system provides, because everybody sees it and everybody's pushing it along and there's no change order sitting on somebody's desk for 5 days. How do you put a number on that? I just believe the number is far bigger, and I wish I had a methodology, a scientific methodology to hang a number on that. I don't know how to do it. 6 million pieces of paper, I'm good with that one. You know, we knew how many papers we had there, and so we got a $1 billion program. That was 25 million. That's 40 times the paperwork in that office, and that's where we got these numbers from. Increased employee and stakeholder engagement. Enthusiasm was overwhelming. Whenever we would leave an office and go back to Lansing, we would say, oh man, how are we going to handle this? We'd go back to that office, you know, 3 days later, they'd say, hey, how about this? They would have it solved and then moved on to someplace else. The ownership from the field through MDOT to the director and even the governor, the contracting community, everybody's on board. It's been an amazing trip. MDOT's goal. Brian had mentioned that we're going into it starting this month. All of our trunk line contracts are e-construction for the next construction season. So we're going after it. I thought this might be just interesting. I don't need to cover it so much. It's in your little brochure there. But we've got a significant amount of people using it in Michigan right now. Just coming off, each office having one e-construction, the big one down in Detroit in the pilots. So we got the state pretty well covered right now. 22 FHWA users. Next step, delivery tickets. Everybody's got delivery tickets. I'd love to tell you that we're 100% paperless. We still have delivery tickets. Anybody got rid of delivery tickets? I gotta talk to you. Okay. Enterprise e-signature validations. Every time a contractor gets a new contract, we got a form they sign, they send it in. Why do we have to do that? They should just have one on file. That's good for all our contracts. So we'll get there. Broaden the user base. Local agency programs is our next one. On our contracts that we got going right now, we've got some local agencies, but not very many. We're going to have a major rollout at some point for all our local agencies in Michigan. Michigan FHWA implementation. As I mentioned, Rob couldn't be here. Rob Fijo was on our contracts, and for you FHWA folks, you may know Ruth Hepfer, Julie Johnston from Michigan. You may have run into them before, but they were the three area engineers that were on our pilots. And this is what Rob had to say. I'm going to talk about some of the issues the Michigan FHWA Division Office had to overcome to support MDOT's e-construction initiative. Supporting e-construction was relatively easy. The first step we went through was getting IT support from headquarters for MDOT's document management software. I'm told this took about 2 months to get approval from Washington, D.C. We updated our standard operating procedures to cover paperless contract administration. This took some time since there was some debate on how and where to store the files. Ultimately, we settled on a shared directory with which was a relatively simple directory structure that would make archiving files easy. I recommend FHWA offices starting this step early so you know where the files are going to be stored. So you could contact Rob and see what his template is. Digitally encrypted electronic signatures was new to our office, and there was a small learning curve when it came to signing documents and the security behind it. But we quickly found e-signature to be secure and a useful tool. Once we started using e-signature, we took a look at all our paper documents to see what could be kept in electronic format. So they're converting their stuff as well. And that's the kind of enthusiasm that we saw too. One of our pilot offices, we got that office running, and the office technician, the person that was running that process, 6 weeks into it said, hey, I want to convert all my manual ones to electronic. Can I do that? And we said, sure, let's make it happen. So we had him put a note in his manila folders, look at ProjectWise, and in ProjectWise, you want to see the beginning of this, you got to look in the manila folders. That's the kind of enthusiasm, just like Rob showed right there, that's really, really fun for us. Michigan Division, FHWA benefits. Rob also says, I've had several e-construction projects now, and I can tell you there are a lot of benefits to having access to MDOT's files from our office. I have access to all the design and construction documentation for the e-construction projects. This means I can audit or review a project without requesting anything from MDOT. If I have a question about a contract modification, which is what we call change orders, we'll be calling contract modifications as soon as we get AASHTO project up. I'll start. If I have a question about a change order, I can see the supporting documentation that's in the file and easily pull it up and review it. One of the randomly selected CIP reviews I had to do this year was on an MDOT e-construction contract. So the documentation was stored in MDOT's electronic document management system. I was able to pull all the supporting information I needed without leaving my desk, and I completed the review in one day. Typically, it can take several weeks to gather all this information from different sources to complete a CAP review. E-signatures have been a very useful tool for both processing change orders quickly when you're outside of the office. Okay. I don't understand the both in there. But anyways, maybe, and inside the office is what he meant. Once your office adopts e-signatures, there are other benefits as well. I had a project recently that had to be advertised by the end of the fiscal year. It's the first diverging diamond interchange, I've heard that today somewhere, in the state, and is being contracted as a design build, heard that today somewhere too. In order to advertise the project, I need my boss's signature, but my boss was at the ITS World Congress in America down in Detroit for the entire week. We were able to email him the letter, he electronically signed it, and MDOT was able to advertise the project on time. Due to the tight turnaround time, I'm not sure we could have done that without digitally encrypted electronic signatures. In addition to doing business faster, we're also able to reduce our storage needs. While this isn't as big a concern for FHWA as for MDOT, we are able to save paper. We've also streamlined the way we process change orders by removing the labor-intensive step of our clerk scanning, archiving, and snail mailing contract modifications back to the state. So clearly they see a lot of benefit to doing this. I don't know that I need to go through a lot of the summary type stuff, other than at the second bullet from the bottom responds to reduce staff. We are operating more efficiently. Is our goal to reduce the staff, or is our goal to get the inspectors out on the job? I see it as an efficiency thing that allows us to do what we should have been doing before, and getting those guys out of the truck and getting them out there on the grade. And so that's a lot of what we've got going right now. And these are in your pamphlet that was provided. We got some videos that were produced, and also we got Stuart and myself. If you want further information, you can contact us. Okay, that's the end. I'd like to tell you that I had a full-time job before e-construction, and this is going to be the same story for many of you. I had a full-time job. I am the product owner of ASHTO Project Construction Materials. This rewrite where we're taking field manager and site manager, making one product out on the web. I'm the product owner for that. Then I got e-construction. I have got 2 full-time jobs, and I've never had more fun in my whole career. These teams that I've got are unbelievable. The bosses I've got, the sponsors I've got are unbelievable. They just drive, they see it. They all see, they've literally donated hundreds of hours to the state because they see the vision, and they want it to work so bad. They have such heart to do that. And that's why I mentioned a little bit earlier is, you know, we're not state workers. We don't have a job. We got us. We're entrepreneurs, and we make things happen, and it's so fun. And the reason, you know, I'll tell you right now that you're going to see, once you get into this, you're going to see a lot of innovation and a lot of people thinking. And I'm confident I can say that because it happened everywhere we touched. Well, there's FHWA, the contract, it didn't matter. Everybody's just on board. So it's really, really a good time, and we are making people's lives better. It's great. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cliff, I think I heard you say fun about a dozen times, and it shows. It shows. A lot of enthusiasm there. Okay, next up we have Amy Tootle from Florida DOT. She's a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida and began her career in transportation hydraulics after graduating from the University of Florida. A majority of her career has been spent in the private sector, designing and permitting limited access highways before working for a contractor as a field engineer. She joined the Florida State Department of Transportation in the fall of 2010, where she started in the State Hydraulics Office in Tallahassee. Amy is now the State Construction Final Estimates Engineer, where she oversees the development of policy and procedure for construction final estimates, as well as specifications, standard revisions. Amy?
Thank you, Tom. Can everybody hear me? Good. As Tom said, I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation. I'm here to talk to you today about our path to e-construction. When I came to the construction office a little over a year ago, the email was sent out statewide announcing, my new position. And immediately, like that, I got a response from our secretary saying, congratulations, now bring us and reform us and bring us into the 21st century. That's a tall order. So, I'm in my position. I start talking to my peers in the construction office, and I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? What do we need to do? And, we sort of sat down, and these were kind of the 7 reasons why we needed to take that leap into the 21st century. First, it's just an antiquated way of doing business. I probably don't need to spend a lot of time. You all know that, we're still printing out forms, signing, scanning, emailing, and it's just not an efficient way of doing business. And the contract turnaround time and stuff is just very slow. So it was just something, that was obvious. The next thing was just keeping up with our partners. We realized that we are behind. Our contractors and consultants are already using mobile devices to do data analysis, looking up e-books, all the contract documents and such. So we just really needed to get on board with that. They're also using, their devices or the laptops to do the electronic as-built plans, either for using PDF software or, CAD software. Additionally, we've started finding out that a lot of them are taking our 2D plans and converting them to 3D models and using them for the automated machine guidance. Additionally, to keep up with them, we're in a day and age where we're not doing traditional contracting anymore. We have a lot of 3P partnerships. We're doing design build, CMCG, and so we needed another way to improve our collaboration technique. Third, and this is probably a big one, it's a generational change. As you know, we have 3 different levels of generations in our DOT, and we realized that, we have the boomers who are very entrenched in the old way of doing business and are very, satisfied doing it that way, and they may be retiring soon and don't necessarily want to change. But yet we have this Generation Y coming into the industry who are very tech savvy, very highly educated, and they're very much gadget oriented. So we recognize the fact that if we're going to retain this young generation into our industry, into engineering and construction, we needed to change with them. And for me, I'm the Generation X, so I'm sort of in between. I learned from the boomers, but yet I have, young children who are, from preschool who are on the computers, and they're showing me how to use my phone or the iPad or such. So, we've taken it that we realize we need to move forward with technology. Florida's work program is one of the largest in the country. As you can see, over the next 5 years, our total funding and budget is $41.8 billion. 47% of that is allocated to construction. And when I looked at our currents, I think like 2 weeks ago, we had 535 active construction contracts worth $11.5 billion. Coupled with the fact that our state highway system has over 43,000 lane miles and over 287 million daily vehicles miles traveled, we really needed to take a look at how we could be more prudent with our spending, our time, and how we are delivering projects. So that was another big reason. We just needed to work smarter, not harder. Next up, we have as you probably knew from the email that I got, we have a very transformational leadership team in place. Secretary Prasad, back a couple years ago, came up with this challenge to all FDOT employees to step up. And it was a two-part initiative, and the first part of this initiative was to be bold, innovative, and inspirational. We needed to start thinking about how we're doing our business and, you know, kind of bring fresh ideas to the forefront. Let's, you know, try to get everybody, you know, inspired and to do something different. So with that in mind, you know, we kind of came about, okay, you know, task teams were developed, innovation teams were developed, and so e-construction came to light. The next part of his initiative for Step Up was to be CPR, consistent, predictable, and repeatable in how we do business. The decisions we are making within the agency, if we, you know, if a contractor's up in the Panhandle and they're doing business, they should receive the same guidance and directive that they would in South Florida if they were doing business. So with that in mind, when we were talking about e-construction within the State Construction Office, we wanted to make sure that the things we started implementing went across the board and did not, it was replicated amongst our 7 districts and the Turnpike. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, that old adage. That just doesn't work for our agency and not for our leadership in place. It's just not something that agencies who strive to succeed sit there and go by. And Florida is one of the agencies, you know, one of the top 10 that are always leading in piloting projects and new ways of doing business. So, you know, to be able to keep up with that, you know, we need to actively listen to our industry and staff in the trenches. We need to know what their needs are and what technology is being used. I mean, when I came on board, you know, I went to all our districts and I met individually with, you know, my district final estimates people and say, what are your issues? What are your problems? What do you need help with? And you start listening and you start seeing the same things. So then you start seeking out some of the rogue people that are, you know, defying DOT's, you know, traditional policies, and you call them up and you go, okay, what are you doing? I hear that you're doing this. I'm not going to get you in trouble. I just want to know what you're doing so I can help, so I can implement it statewide. So you get that kind of buy-in, and then you can take it from there. Lastly, design is already doing it. Projects have been let electronically at FDOT since 2005. They started, I think the first project was in 2001. So it just made sense. Why we weren't doing it, I don't know, but here we are. There's 3D design models. We have a few consultants that are trickling in with the 3D design models. Right now, we've been working with CAD, our CAD group and design to revise our specifications for construction so that if these 3D design models come in, that our contractors are able to use them. I have to say that that last one, the implementation undetermined, is now changed. I sent this in a week or 2 ago, and I've been talking with some people in the past few days. And our design group, because of the workshop that was done a couple months ago down in Central Florida, it has now kind of kicked it in gear, and they have a directive, our design group, to go along with 3D models. So how that's going to work out, there's a lot more. If you were in the workshop before this one, there's a lot more that goes into it in terms of survey and such. So, but it's coming, and that's a good thing. So now came the how. We kind of looked at what our vision was in the State Construction Office, and it was pretty simple. We just wanted to go paperless. That's all. The how we got there took a little bit more thought, and we kind of developed a systems thinking approach where we just don't look at the sum of the parts. We look at the product of the interactions. And so we needed to look at the overall picture and what we were trying to accomplish. And we realized that civil integrated management was just kind of the overall picture of everything, and that e-construction was just a part of SIM. So what we needed to do was start to develop those interconnected relationships. So we started talking to our survey group, started talking to CAD, design, OIS, and such, just to kind of see where everybody was at within the whole umbrella of SIM and where we fit in. That was a critical thing, because once the people on the front end understand what the users need, then we can all work together. We did realize that when we were coming up with this broad picture approach and systems thinking approach, that there are no final answers. This is going to be an ever-evolving thing as technology moves forward, and that when you have every solution does create new problems. So you just have to be willing to take that risk and understand that it's not going to be seamless. And if you understand that up front, it's going to be okay. We have been educating the districts and the stakeholders as we've been going along. That was very important to us in developing the implementation plan to get their buy-in, because we didn't want to sit up in Tallahassee and say, here you go, have at it. We did, talk with them a lot. I have monthly teleconferences with my final estimates managers, and they are in the know. We have district construction engineer meetings as well. Just giving them, little tidbits. Here's where we're going. Here are the parts that we're trying to implement. And we've been listening to them and their concerns all along. And we've had to revise some of the things we've done because it just didn't make sense. We thought it was great in central office, but in reality, in the trenches, it's just not going to work. So we've been very much involved with them. The stakeholders, other stakeholders, the contractors and such. We have asphalt conferences. We have our construction conference. We've been telling them and educating them through that process, also holding other separate meetings with them. So we have 5 parts that we are originally kind of trying to implement in terms of e-construction. We have a collaborative sharing site, the use of mobile devices, digital signatures, form automation, and electronic as-built. The first big part is the collaborative sharing site. We realized at FDOT that our firewall was hindering the collaboration efforts. So a task team was developed. My partner in e-construction in the State Construction Office, Doug Martin, he was the task team leader. And along with different representatives from the district offices, they created this task team. And they went to management and said, look, this is the problem. This is why we can't, collaborate like we should be doing. So will you allow us to procure a consultant to be able to host a site outside of our firewall that allows us to do this collaboration? Management gave the blessing, and then this past summer they went and procured a consultant. The biggest part of this that we required for the procurement process was that whatever product that the consultant used, it had to be off the shelf and dynamically configurable. We want it to be able to change as time went on. We didn't want it to be something that we were stuck with. It needed to evolve with us. The first project was activated in August 2014, and that's the I-4 Ultimate project through downtown Orlando. It is a huge project. It is the reconstruction of I-4, and it's in the infancy stages. I think at the end of September they just got it up and going. But the reason we kind of did that is it's a joint venture with FDOT and Turnpike. It's going to be partially tolled. And the Turnpike Enterprises has been using, which we now, I missed a skip in terms of the consultant we procured, they're using Project Solve. And Project Solve is a SharePoint site outside of our firewall. And so Project Solve had been used by our Turnpike district for many years, but at a lower level. Now it's going to be more robust and ramped up. So it was an obvious kind of choice to use the I-4 Ultimate as a kind of test pilot to go along with this. Back in September, the same task team was developing the standard workflows that would be used. And I thought they were only going to choose 10, but then I talked to Doug and he sent me the list, and it's a lot more than 10, which is good. So they're going to get that going, and that should be up and running, this whole Project Solve site, back in November of this year. Now this is kind of how it works. You have the project share site outside of DOT's firewall. All the stakeholders in DOT have access to the site. You'll be able to access all your contract documents, all forms, all RFIs, whatever you need on a project will be hosted on that project share site. And what will happen is in Site Manager, when a project is activated, it will send an alert to our district administrator, who will then set up the site. And then all of the forms and everything, all the documentation will be pre-populated with all this project-specific information. So then when a stakeholder or an FDOT personnel, staff needs a certain document, they'll pull it from the SharePoint site. It'll all automatically be pre-populated with the project information. They fill out what they need to do. They put it back into the project share site. If it needs to be signed by somebody else or it needs some action, the workflow will send out an alert to that person. And then they go into the project share site, do what they need to do, and put it back in. So RFIs, any kind of our monthly estimates, whatever will be funneled through that project share site. And then when the document is done, it's complete, it'll alert the project administrator at DOT. They'll take the document off the project share site, push it through our firewall, and into our electronic data management system. When the project's complete, same thing will happen and the site will shut down. This is sort of a snapshot of what one of the test pages will look like. As you can see, it'll have different items such as shop drawings, the project contracts, incoming submittals. Everything will go through this individual site, and this will be individual for each particular project. So the expense, we're budgeting it into our work program. It costs about $125 per month per contract, and for FDOT, it equates to about $800,000 per year. The next big thing, part of our e-construction puzzle, is the use of mobile devices. Again, another task team came up with using a pilot project and doing it a Windows-based tablet for engineering and operations, and it would involve construction design, maintenance, traffic ops. It's scheduled to end in the end of November, but I was brought in late into the game, and as an observer of what was going on and what they were piloting, I just noticed that it wasn't getting into the job functions of construction. I really wanted to know how it was going to work for us and not just sort of a superficial. So when I brought this to the attention of upper management, they said, okay, why don't you do your own specific construction pilot project? So I've had the scope together now. It's kind of running through the loops of OIS, and it ran through my two people at the districts that I was bringing involved. And we're trying to get that pushed through so we can start at the end of the year. The big thing about that, and the reason I kind of was prolonging and kind of put it off some, was the way I wanted to have the project solve site in place. And these are some of the specific things that I wanted to look at. The interface with the project solve site, that was the major thing, is to be able to have our guys mobile and in the field and being able to access everything. The access to the ebooks. Our specifications, standards, and manuals and such have been on the internet for years. Our people have been able to access them for a long time. It's hard to do when you're in the field with a laptop and such. What are our video and meeting capabilities? Meetings, if somebody needs to attend a meeting, can they just attend via GoToMeeting in the field in their truck and not have to go back to the field office, thus spending more time on the project and doing inspections? Also the video capability. If there's a problem in the field, can they troubleshoot it right then and there and connect back into our district office to be able to resolve the issue then and there, not have to waste time going back, taking pictures or emailing, just trying to streamline it some. Also the ability to do the as-built plan on your mobile device. You'll have access to your PDFs, being able to mark up stuff right then and there. And then have the email and calendar access so you're not disconnected at all. One of our district folks that I caught wind of, he had 4 different projects And this was all the documentation he was having to carry around in his truck, you know. He had 3 different letting dates, so he had to have 3 different design standards, 3 different, you know, spec books, the CPAM and such, and it equated to about 20,000 pieces of paper. He bought his own iPad mini and put it all on that. And he was getting his plans from the contractor. The contractor actually let him, you know, use their share site or whatever so he can download the plan sets. So, you know, how do you say no to that? So luckily, our OIS group, we have a new chief information officer that when I, you know, proposed my crazy plan, he thought it was magnificent. So he built in legislative budget requests for our next fiscal year. And they're going to go ahead and propose $630,000 for the first year to buy us 300 devices, accessory data plans, any custom software that we need, and training. Within a $180,000 annual renewal for the data plans, and then $150,000 every 3 years for device replacement. It has already gone to the governor's office and got his blessing, so now it has to go to the legislature. So, fingers crossed. The next component was the digital signatures. That was another big one. Again, the same task team, Doug Martin, that was working on the collaborative site, they were also working on the digital signatures at the same time. And, you know, they went and did some investigation trying to find out what company was the best to go with, and they went with a company called IdenTrust. I know there's several out there, but what they liked about them was that it had a way of kind of verifying your identity. Like when I did mine, I had to, you know, sign my firstborn away, and no, I just had to show 2 forms of ID, get it notarized, send it off, they send you back a certificate and such. So it allows for a little bit more secure public-private key to be able to verify who you are. We did an initial purchase of 390 vouchers, and then, you know, then we kind of went through the process of issuing a memo of understanding, and then we're doing some other stuff here. This is the memo of understanding. Our secretary got together with the leads of the Florida Transportation Builders Association and the Florida Institute of Consultant Engineers, and they came up with an agreement to say that they are going to promote e-commerce for construction contracts. So that was a big thing. So the industry is agreeing that this is the direction we're heading in terms of doing digital signatures or electronic signatures. Here are some of the statutes and rules that are kind of guiding us right now in Florida. The big thing was the Florida Administrative Code. Our CAD group kind of worked with the Florida Board of Professional Engineers to rewrite some language that would allow the use of the signing and sealing of electronically transmitted plans, specifications, reports, or other documents. I'll show you in a couple minutes here. One thing is, the last bullet on the sheet is here, trying to get the Department of Financial Services for the state of Florida to accept the digital signatures for our monthly estimates. That was a big thing that the districts were complaining about, so we're working on that. I went to our comptroller's office, gave them all the backup documentation about IdenTrust and what we were doing there with the digital signatures, and so the comptroller's office at DOT is now taking that over across the street to the DFS. So hopefully we'll get that approved, and we'll be able to start doing the monthly estimates through the digital signatures. Now, in terms of the professional seals, the great thing, our design group, when they were kind of redoing the plan sets and such, they added in a signature sheet right behind the key sheet that would allow each specialty engineer to put their seal and digitally sign it. And the way the statutes were written and the way the Florida Administrative Code is written, that you're just the above professional engineer, and below is listed the sheets that you're responsible for. So you don't have to sign and seal each sheet of the plan set. You just list which ones you're responsible for. So that was a big key part in what we were doing, because everybody was worried about their license, rightfully so. I mean, your license is online. We added in the picture for the warm and fuzzy. Because people like to see the picture. It's not necessary. The way our rules are written, I don't have to have my seal actually up there. So what we're following suit with design, and we're going to add in another signature sheet in construction for our final plan set, and our resident engineer can sign and seal his portion. If there's a significant design change, say drainage changes, has to be redesigned, the drainage engineer can then come in and sign and seal and put the list of their sheets that they're responsible for. The expense was, we had 390 signatures that we bought off the bat, $100 per certificate. They're good for 2 years. So it equated to about $19,500 per year. And our OIS department is paying for that. I suspect there's going to be many more individuals within our department that'll start ending up using digital signatures. This is going to spread beyond construction at some point. Another part was the form automation, pretty simple. We started adding the digital signature blocks to a lot of our forms, but that's kind of going to become obsolete once the project solve site is used permanently, because all our forms will be pre-populated and they'll have the digital signature block. So we really won't even need to pull them off our websites anymore. When you have your project solve will automatically do that. One thing that I've worked with our district final estimates folks on is a transmittal form to revise the required files that are due. When a final estimates package is sent to our district offices, they have boxes of hard copies of stuff, and we just realized that's ridiculous. Everything's already in our EDMS system, so just provide our final estimates folks the file numbers, and they can go into the electronic data management system, pick off the file numbers, and do the review that way. They don't need the hard copies.
2 minutes,
Okay, electronic as-built. We traditionally had computation manual for our preliminary and final quantities. That went away. We were putting it into the plan sets with summary of quantity boxes. With that decision, we decided to go electronic. Then it was, okay, do we do PDF software? Do we do CAD software? And it was through the discussions, it was determined we were going to do our as-built through the PDF type software. Because at the time, the 3D modeling and the intelligence isn't in place at DOT. Just didn't make sense to go through that trouble. And our whole goal is just to go paperless. So at this time, we're going to go use PDF software, did some evaluations, and chose a product called Bluebeam. They all do the same thing, Nuance, Adobe. Bluebeam seemed to work best for us. It's an engineering and construction-based software. Trying to get the money for that now, hopefully to implement in January 2015. This is a quick thing, plan sheet. You'll see that the cloud revisions are there. You can embed pictures, you can embed files. So any backup calculations, shop drawings, whatever you can embed into the PDF file. We like the idea of it all being in one file and not having to go through our EDMS system to look for backup calculations. Same here, we're revising the manuals for our markups. The expenses, we have 401 licenses that are needed for construction. Our OS group spec'd it out as $120 per license, $48,000 to purchase all of them. We don't, as everybody, expense money is very tight, so I wrote up a justification and I'm sending it to our engineering operations executive leadership to try to use some reserve money to purchase it. In summary, our initial investment is about $1.5 million. Our annual recurring expenses to keep this going is anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million. Our reduction in scanning costs by eliminating the use of a consultant is $125,000. And borrowing from Michigan DOT's savings analysis and kind of projecting for Florida's work program, we figure we're going to save $22 million a year. So that's where we're at. We're very excited about it. I don't know what Doug and I are going to do in a year and a half, or probably by the end of 2015 is when we hope to have all the pieces in place. We'll move on to, just keep refining the process, but we're very excited about it. Some people might be a little stressed, but it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. It's always tough going last. She did a great job of keeping us on schedule. And just a few little notes I took on the presentations here. I heard about leadership, transformational leadership, that the leadership has to buy into this idea and empower the folks to go out and make bold decisions and think outside the box. We talked about implementation challenges, working with your IT groups and dealing with your security issues, getting behind your firewalls. What does this all translate to? Our inspectors looking at the work that they're out there to look at and being more efficient and producing a higher quality project. FHWA reviews are seamless and effortless now. The information is readily available. And Cliff, I think I heard in one of your previous MDOT about saving money in terms of reduction in claims. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. On the contract in Detroit, the $180 million contract, there were there were some damage claims that somebody's window got broken from the vibration. But the contract.
Okay, so now what I'd like to do is open it up for questions to the panelists, just a few minutes directly about their presentations. And those out on the webcast, please chime in through the chat room. Yes, sir. 1 second here. Can you please state your name and what agency you're with?
Mike Davies, Central Federal Lands. Great presentation. How did you convince your respective CIOs that this was the right course of action? Did you develop a business plan, an argument to convince them?
I will have to say I'm kind of lucky because we had a new chief information officer come in a couple months ago, and he's very progressive. But before that, Doug was working with our previous one, and I think with all the statutes that had changed, allowing for e-commerce and our memo of understanding with the FHWA and Vice, I think that was just a big catalyst. They had already agreed with the innovators team to do some of these mobile device pilot projects, and I think management had established the innovators team to come up with these bold, innovative ideas and try to tackle them and bring them forward. So they were already kind of under the understanding that we needed to evolve as an agency. So, I mean, I think we're very lucky at FDOT that the management we have in place. But I think when you have these cost savings, it's hard to kind of turn a blind eye to that. It's just.
So no formal business plan, just raw numbers?
I think a lot of it was by leadership and just coming together and presenting. Like, I went to our chief information officer along with Doug Martin. I keep saying Doug because he's another Cliff over here, and we presented him, our idea of what we were trying to accomplish within construction. And then we even showed him some of Michigan DOT's videos. Some of these videos, if you haven't seen them, I encourage you all to go online and check them out, because it's just amazing. And those videos alone had him convinced.
Cliff, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, and in Michigan, certainly that is an issue. But when the deputy director says this is going to happen, then we went back to him and said, all right, this is what we've come up with. And he said, okay, let's make it happen. And I think any of those talks with the CIO for MDOT happened at a higher level than us. And it was pretty much MDOT saying, this is what we're going to need to do. And we're going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. Try to get your resources in line, and for the iPads and stuff, we're going to find the money to make this happen, because I mentioned earlier about the vision. Everybody's just so on board, and it's happening. So our CIO in that direction, he's a pretty good guy anyway, and he's got some vision. And so he was on board pretty quickly, and then eventually we got some of the other problems ironed out.
Two others. Can you expand on the digital signature? You said you bought some sort of certification on digital signatures. Is that Adobe, or is that Bluebeam you were talking?
The digital signatures can be used on Adobe or Bluebeam, and I think I don't know if it's about Nuance, but most PDF softwares you can use the digital signature. You go in through the software, you apply your signature, you type in your key code, and then it puts it on it. And it's a public-private key. So I have my private key where I put in my PIN number and I sign the document. I send it out to somebody. They can verify through the public key that and validate it that I sent it, and that's a valid signature. And that's sort of our statutes are kind of written that way for the public-private key.
We have PIN cards in the federal government, so it would be similar analogous.
I believe so, because IdenTrust is when the task team researched it. I think part of the reason it was because a lot of the government agencies were using the same type of company.
I wanted to talk to Amy about that myself, because the system that we're using is not an enterprise solution. It's free, but it's not, as I mentioned in my presentation, every time they win a bid, they got to submit a document. So I'm really excited to look into an enterprise-wide asset management for digitally encrypted electronic signatures, because I think there's a way better doing business than what we're doing right now. So I was really glad to hear her say that, because I got to talk to her about that.
What?
Okay.
The data at the end of the project, at the end of the year, are you using it to generate performance measures, organizational performance measures and results on how your construction staff is performing? Or?
Well, I hope Amy is, but for us right now, it's purely electronic document storage.
Same right now. It's just electronic document storage.
I'd love to get there, though.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, I think once we get everything in place and get going, we're still in the infancy. We were kind of, we're going through the process now, where Michigan has already gone there. I think as time evolves, this whole process will evolve. And that's why I said, when you take that systems thinking approach, you're not always going to be done. You're continually improving. So I'm sure as time goes forward, we'll be improving upon what we're doing.
Okay, in the back here?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, does e-construction have an offline component for places that are just so remote you don't have internet? Or do you have that set up somehow?
Well, with the mobile devices, and I know Michigan DOT, and we're both proposing to use the iPads with the data plans included. Sometimes, the data plans, it doesn't matter where you're at, so you're not going to be reached. So a lot of that will have to be, if you're using the SharePoint site and you're pulling the documents off, you just have to wait till you're back in range for it to be transferred over. And I did mention that to the OIS, my recommendation for a particular carrier, because I know they have more coverage than others, so.
Yeah, and that is an issue. And one of our projects in Michigan right now is to find a device that will be able to pick up signals if there's a signal there. It can't create a signal if there's not one there, but it can take 1 bar and take it to 4 bars. And we found one, and if somebody would like to get a hold of me, I can't remember the name of it right now, if you'd like to get a hold of me, but remote connectivity is a big deal. I don't know if you're a site manager state or a field manager state, but there's a new component to gathering inspectors' information called Mobile Inspector. That will run with site manager or field manager, and it will run with construction materials, ASHTO project construction materials when that comes out. And so the inspectors won't have to get trained, because they'll just be using the same thing. That one has the idea right. When you don't have a signal and you're trying to do things, it just builds up the data, And then when it hits a signal, the inspector doesn't even know it, you know, they get updates and that kind of thing automatically once the signal shows up.
Okay, we have one more question for the panelists, and then we're going to talk about our implementation plan.
Hi, I'm Shauna King with Idaho DOT. And I heard some mention of Site Manager and ProjectWise in one or both of the presentations. And I just wanted to hear more about how Site Manager works with and ProjectWise works with the e-construction.
Well, do you have project you're in the state?
We use ProjectWise and Site Manager, but it's the client server Site Manager.
We use Bentley products, you know, in design, but when we procured the consultant, you know, everybody had the opportunity to submit their, you know, their proposals to us, but we chose to go with this Project Solve instead of a ProjectWise, just because we really wanted to be outside of our firewall. We didn't want it. We had heard some of the issues that Michigan had trying to get through with Citrix and through the firewall and such, and we just wanted to be outside the firewall, so this made the most sense for us. And we do use Site Manager, but that was the key, is that when a project is activated in Site Manager, the project administrator or whoever at the district will then set up the Project Solve site.
Amy has made great sense all day. That's just a great answer, because we did have some growing pains that way. If Site Manager, you can print documents to a PDF, then you can load them to ProjectWise, and we can help you out with that, because you know, we've got the structure, we've got the document naming conventions to help you out and that kind of thing. But because it is document-based, ProjectWise, if you can take a DWR and Site Manager, print as a PDF and load it, it can be done. But I don't know enough about Site Manager to know if you can do that or not.
Great answers and really good questions here. What we'd like to do now is move the discussion into what type of ideas or strategies do you have for us with regard to development of this implementation plan? You know, what can we do out there to help get the information out to you, such as peer exchange or webinars such as we're doing today? And certainly those out there on the webcast, you know, please use the chat room for any questions you may have or suggestions. But what's your experience with implementation plans? What benefits have you seen from past ones, and what do you think we should be doing?
I was involved some with the CMGC implementation, and it seems like the peer exchanges are very valuable, because every state has their own kind of unique circumstances and set of issues, and webinars are good to get, you know, general information out, but the peer exchanges, you can actually get in there one-on-one and talk through their issues with them. That would be something that we did in the CMGC that worked effectively. So.
Okay, thank you. Other suggestions? While you're thinking of that, let me throw out a question or take a quick poll. How many of you are exploring this deployment of this technology? For a raise of hands, which means you're out there gathering information, you're interested in moving in this direction, but you really haven't taken the first step in terms of deploying electronic technologies? What's that?
We're implementing as well, but we're always exploring. But in Nevada, it's kind of a baby steps approach to this. But one thing that's helpful is hearing how much money Florida estimates they're saving, or Michigan estimate they're saving. Because the one thing I've learned is as an engineer, I got to become a better salesman with my upper management. And like the slide Amy had about the 4 different contracts and all the pieces of paper that this poor inspector had to haul around in his 2-ton truck or whatever it was he had to give him. Literally, when I went to sell implementation to my director and the other directors within the state, I literally brought visual aids with me, and it was about 50 pounds of paper or 100 pounds of paper, whatever it was. It was heavy. And I plopped it on the table, and they said, this is what I'm trying to get away from, get away from printing all these documents. And by the way, it's going to save 1.2 million a year. Our program's much smaller than yours, but we just got to become better salesmen, and any help you guys can provide us with that as in examples would be great, or appreciated.
Great. So be better salesmen and provide you with examples of lessons learned or approaches, reports, or strategies that these states have used successfully, and maybe not so successfully. Other suggestions? Who is in the middle of this? Who's in process, I call it, or you're using document management systems, but you're ready to take it to the next level by employing mobile devices or a SharePoint site or something to have everything come together in process. Who's in the thick of this thing? So federal lands? Who would say you're advanced, that you're steps ahead of Michigan and Florida? Anybody? I think they're afraid to raise their hand because they'll be part of the peer exchange. But anybody who's comparable to Michigan and Florida? No? Okay, so you're somewhere in the exploring and in the process and trying to get to this. So, any questions or suggestions from the internet? Nope. Other ideas?
Our biggest struggle is this IT security, convincing IT that having a firewall outside, having a system outside the firewall. We did it for our EBAC system, but it's a painful conversation every year. So when we're in the process of implementing e-bidding and we're just getting started, so that's one more element we'll bring in. But if you have any documentation that can help convince a CIO of the advantages of having this outside the firewall, that would be great.
Good suggestion. Good suggestion. Certainly, security is a big issue, and working closely with your IT folks and collaborating on how that can be accomplished is, I think we'll be looking at lessons learned from how to do that, how to approach it, and so forth. So, okay. Well, with that, I think we're done, and I want to thank you for your attention, your suggestions, and certainly I hope you learned something from Michigan and Florida. They did an excellent job, as well as FHWA with Brian, so I'd like you to give them a last round of applause. And certainly, let's not stop the dialogue here. So if you have any thoughts after this, certainly we'll be around for the next day or so. And certainly use your mobile device to text or email us with any suggestions or comments or anything else you want to know about e-construction. So thank you very much.